Life is a long highway and I'm just doing the best I can.
Welcome to the Straight Line to Success. Welcome back. I am excited today. My guest, Billy D'Andrea. Billy, thank you for being here with us. You know, there are so many things that I thought I knew about you, but just talking to you a little bit before the show started, I'm like, man, he's got so many facets to your life. So I really appreciate you being in here today and looking forward to this discussion.
Thank you.
We've got some of the best listeners in the world watching us, and we welcome y'all in. And Billy D, you know, I'd like to start out just before we even know anything about you. Let me ask you one question. Are you okay with that?
Sure.
So how do you define success?
Well, I think success comes in a lot of different categories and whatnot, you know, discipline, perseverance. But I think one of the most important things is, you know, I've had a very fortunate and blessed career, but people helped me along the way. I didn't get to be the executive senior associate athletic director at Clemson because I'm Bill D'Andrea. Somebody saw something in me that moved me along. And I look back at those people that were in the journey of my life that had an impact, even from the inception of starting in coaching with my former offensive line coach, Larry Vanderhayden. And he asked me to be a graduate assistant at East Carolina. And, you know, my kind of coaching career took off, landed me at Clemson, and then, of course, got into administration.
Well, and I appreciate that answer. That answer sounds to me like how you achieve success. And I would say that, you know, one evidence that you are successful and have been successful is that you're sitting in here being interviewed on a success and leadership podcast. But, you know, I guess that's one of the things that in my journey, it was like I thought success, you know, it kind of has morphed. And so, you know, just thinking about that word success, you know, what does that mean? So, you know, maybe just to answer it a different way, you know, how do you want to be remembered? I mean, what in your life would you consider to be success?
Well, I think I would like to be remembered that I made a difference and an impact on the people that I associated with, that I coached. That I helped them become better fathers, better husbands, better citizens, contributing back to the community. As I said, you know, it's kind of a me society today, and I was just fortunate to have people help me along the way and guide me. You know, my parents, you know, they actually, I think my mother went to 8th grade and my dad went to 10th grade. But they did value education, and I was fortunate to get a scholarship and have an opportunity. And, you know, I always had this quote. I'm not sure I can say it verbatim, but, you know, I think it's, you know, God has given us all different kind of gifts. And I think it's your responsibility to find your gift. But it's also your responsibility to give that gift back and pass it on and you know, kind of duplicate yourself or something. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So find your success, if I heard you correctly, is finding your gift and giving it back.
Absolutely.
Yeah, which I love that. And I want to talk, let me back up and kind of introduce you a little bit to the audience. So you were born, tell us where you were born and raised. And
I was born in a small coal mining town 10 miles south of Pittsburgh.
Okay.
That's where I grew up. You know, we were kind of a little bit poor. We, you know, had a coal furnace. We lived in a duplex.
You have brothers and sisters?
I have brothers and sisters. I have 2 older brothers. One is 10 years older than me, and one is 9 years.
And what are their names?
My oldest brother is Barry, and my middle brother is named John.
Okay.
So I probably came along as a little bit of a mistake 10 years later. Both of them were very good athletes as well, and pretty instrumental in helping me when I was young. And but I had the opportunity to go to Indiana State, and
Your parents' names? What were their names?
my mother's name was Ruth, and my father's name was Alfonso.
Okay.
So, and my grandparents lived on the other side of the duplex.
Okay.
So, I grew up. They came from San Demetrio, Italy, and my grandmother didn't really speak a whole lot of English. My grandfather did, and that he was a miner. My dad was a coal miner for 27 years.
Wow.
And it was a very dangerous work back then and everything. My first semester, I think Indiana State, I think I made a 1.8.
Oh.
And my grandfather told me, he said, "Don't you worry." He said, "I wasn't getting you a good job in the mine." And so he took me in there, and I knew right then this is not what I wanted to do. So I think I made the honor roll the next semester.
That's fantastic. Now, you went to Indiana State University?
Yes.
Now, are you a Pittsburgh Steelers fan?
Oh, absolutely.
We'll have to talk about that later. But so Indiana State, playing football. In what position?
I was a center. I actually went there as a tight end, and fortunately, there was a center. We ran the wishbone, so I was never really that strong or that big. I probably weighed 240 at that time,
which was
maybe
big back then.
A little bit strong. Yeah, absolutely. And I could reach block.
Yeah.
I could get my head across the nose guard, and we ran the wishbone, so I was pretty successful at doing that. And I really had some great teammates and great career. We were pretty successful. We went back 10 years ago for our 40th reunion, and we were voted one of the best teams to come through Indiana State. So, just had a good coach. Our head coach was a guy named Jerry Huntsman, who was the winningest coach in the state of Indiana as a high school coach, and then I think he coached at Butler before he came to Indiana State, but he was very successful.
And I suspect that he had an impact on your life, being around someone like that.
Absolutely.
And you obviously love football.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So what's just give me one of the favorite things that you love about football. Just one.
Well, I think it's the ultimate team sport. I mean, particularly being in the offensive line, you can have four guys, block everybody, and one guy miss the assignment, and it just doesn't work, And but I think it's a team sport. I think it's physical, the contact, the competition, and the strategy now. I mean, the game has certainly changed with no longer two tight ends and I formation and pounded up the
smash
middle.
Mouth football.
Yeah, now it's spread out. It's basketball and grass and throwing it all around. So, but really the fundamentals happen. I mean, teams that win have to run the ball. Teams that win have to play defense and, and be physical and those kind of things.
Now, I told you to give me one good thing. but no, it's great. I love the game. We certainly share football in common. And, you've helped me along my career amazingly multiple times. If we have time, I want to mention a couple of those. But before we get there, I mean, how did you get to being at Clemson? When I met you, you were had been with you were the assistant athletic director when I met you at Clemson. And I was wanting to get in and be a sports agent. And I had studied the rules, and the rules said that each college and university in the state of South Carolina could promulgate their own rules that you needed to follow. So I was talking to my business partner at the time, Gene Kraselic.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, we got to go and talk to Clemson. And so Gene reached out to you, and you had him in, and you made the comment to Gene that you said at the time you had been at the school for 13 years, and we were the first NFL agents that had walked through your front door.
That's right. There's a lot of backdoor stuff going on back then.
But anyway, you were very helpful, but before, so how did you get there? I mean, how did your career lead you? And you had a lot of success after that time I've met you. And of course, you've helped us sharing a bunch of success. But tell us about that. What was your journey there?
All right. When I graduated, I actually went back to Pittsburgh, and I took the test for the Pennsylvania State Police.
Okay.
And
You were a criminal justice
I was a
major
criminal
on your
justice-
way to being a police officer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kind of. Well, I really had aspirations to be an FBI.
FBI.
agent and
Okay.
all that.
FBI.
And I thought that would be a stepping stone, and did well on the test and everything, but they weren't taking any candidates until October. So I ended up helping my father, who was a retired miner. He was painting some houses, trim work and things of that nature. And but my college coach, Larry Vanderhayden, my position coach, took the job at East Carolina as the offensive line coach. And the head coach at that time was Sonny Randall, who was an All-Pro, played for the Cardinals.
Sonny
in the
Randall.
60s. Sonny Randall.
What position? All pro?
He was a wide receiver.
Okay.
And really played at Virginia. Was probably a sprinter back then, and fast, and I think Sonny scored close to 80 touchdowns during his career.
Wow.
Yeah. He was an All-Pro several years. But
So he's the head coach at East Carolina.
He was the
Your
head coach.
position coach is there.
Yes, and I was a grad assistant.
Okay.
I got my master's in counseling, but the first semester I was there, we won the Southern Conference Championship, and Sonny, being a Virginia graduate, took the job at the University of Virginia. And I didn't really want to leave because I had taken 9 credit hours, and I knew Virginia was pretty hard academically. So I wanted to finish my master's. I enjoyed being there. And Pat Dye, who was an assistant under Bear Bryant, this was his first head coaching job. And
That's a pretty historical name there.
Yeah, he kept us. There was another graduate assistant, Jack White, which is an interesting story, I'll tell you. And so when I finished my master's, Coach Dye actually during that time got the Wyoming job. And he was willing to take both of the graduate assistants with us and visited, but I think it was 40 below when I was there on my visit, and I just didn't really want to get out that far away from home and from my folks and all that stuff. But fortunately, Sonny Randall hired me as the assistant offensive line coach, so I coached the tackles and the tight ends.
Okay.
And at that time, Virginia was very difficult academically to get in. You almost had to meet the regular admission standards. And that was a little bit
Hard on recruiting.
Yeah, hard on recruiting. I mean, I think one year we had 14 players in the state that we couldn't get in. I think 9 of them went to North Carolina, and the other 7 went to NC State.
Oh.
But later on, we were there for 3 years, and he got let go. And later on, when George Welch came, they gave some latitude on the admission standards. And of course, Virginia is what Virginia is now, about ready to play for the conference championship under Tony Elliott. And when we got let go, I went to Massanutten Military Academy and became the head coach.
Okay.
And that was a time when the SAT was being changed from 700 to 800. The NCAA ratcheted up the NCAA. And so there were several kids from Division I institutions that didn't qualify. So those institutions, Tennessee, Georgia, North Carolina, even Clemson at that time, they put them in there, and it was a concentrated effort on math and science in preparation to pass the SAT.
Okay.
And the first year, we played like Virginia Tech's freshmen, Navy's freshmen, James Madison's freshmen, and we were very successful. I think we went 9-1 the first year and 8-2 the next year. But
now let me ask you this question. So you went from being a position coach to the head coach.
Yeah.
Had you been a coordinator or anything like that?
No. I mean, it was.
How was that transition? Was that easy for you? Or
It was fairly easy
Just took to
because I had a couple really good assistants.
And you,
know.
you didn't grow up wanting to be a football coach or be in athletics or any of that kind of stuff. That wasn't your goal or your dream or
But
anything.
I think the good Lord led me that way.
Yeah.
And I think He gave me an opportunity to say, hey, look, I've given you these gifts and you can make a difference.
Yeah. So you just had a natural ability to lead and love the game of football,
Yeah.
understood it.
Yeah.
So Manasseh, did I say that right?
Massanutten.
Massanutten.
Yeah.
And where is that?
It's in Woodstock, Virginia.
Okay.
And just a little military.
It was kind of a prep school. You had
Yeah.
great athletes that needed to get prepped to get into some of these other schools,
Correct.
and they sent them to you.
Yep. And we
Trained them up.
and focused them. And then I think the first year, I think we had 15 Division I kids that either returned to the institution that they came from or were recruited,
Somewhere
off or
else.
something
You went
else.
9-1 your first season.
Yeah,
That's
and then,
incredible.
Yeah, and then the next year, I think we were at 8-2. I think we tried to play 10 games, but it was, and then we played a couple other military schools like Fort Union.
Yep.
And can't think of the one right there in Stanton Military Academy. So that was really enlightening to me, to have that responsibility. I was probably 26, 27 years old.
Yeah, big job.
But I had to wear a uniform.
Oh, wow.
It's because, and I always would forget my hat. And there was these retired, colonels and everything that would kind of always reprimand me. And I'd leave it in the cafeteria or something, but yeah, you had to wear a uniform. So, and they had roll call at the beginning and,
Yeah.
And then, fortunately, when I was in Virginia, Steve Shaughnessy, who was a very successful high school coach in North Carolina, got the head job at Catawba. And so he hired me at Catawba, and I spent 3 years there.
Okay.
And then he got let go. And so I visited my college coach who helped me to go to East Carolina, who is now at Clemson.
Okay.
So in the spring, I went down to visit, and I wasn't married at that time. And I certainly wanted to kind of get, stay in coaching. So what happened was I talked to Coach Ford, and I had a new coach Ford because he had come to Massanutten Military Academy.
Okay.
Okay.
When he was at Virginia Tech?
When he was at Virginia Tech.
Okay.
So
this is Coach Danny Ford.
it was Coach Danny Ford. And so, Coach Ford said, at that time you could only have 9 full-time assistants. And he said, I don't have any, but he said, but you can come and be a graduate assistant and run the dorm. So I lived in Malden Hall, and I ran the dorm.
And how old were you then?
I was probably 31 or something like that,
Yeah.
young,
Yeah.
And then after a year, I already had my master's in East Carolina, but I was taking some courses. And after a year, Coach Ford asked me if I wanted to go to Southern Miss. And I said, yeah. So he had been on a pony trip with Jim Carmody, who was the head coach. And so I got an interview. And during my interview, when I flew into the airport, the other graduate assistant at East Carolina that was with me had just interviewed for the receiver job, unbeknownst to me. I mean, I saw him in the airport. He said, what are you doing here? I said, I'm interviewing for the Southern Miss offensive line. He said, I just got done interviewing for the receiver job. And anyway, we both got hired, and we coached there for 3 years. And then Coach Ford had an opening, and he called me and asked me if I wanted to come back. And I said, yes.
Okay.
So I came back in 82. And then, of course, coached the tackles and tight ends from 82 till he separated with the university. And then, again, blessed by former athletic director Bobby Robinson, who offered me an opportunity to stay. And I was a little bit, by that time, I was probably I don't know, 37, and I wanted to coach. And so he told me that he would give me a job, but he wanted me to promise that, if he gave me the opportunity, that he didn't want me to stay a month and then, something came up.
Jet out on him.
Jet out. So I took it, and actually it was one of the best things that ever happened to me. It was a blessing. I ended up running Vickery Hall, which was the academic support program, and it was the first standalone facility in the country.
Wow.
I mean, it was not associated with the Coliseum or under the stadium. It was isolated right on campus and whatnot. And
so that was innovation.
That was
in football, in American football, and you were right there at the heart of it with Coach Ford.
And I cut my teeth.
Or that was after Coach Ford left.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it was the next year.
Okay.
But I kind of cut my teeth on coaching, so just being in the academic arena. I mean, I always expected my kids to go to class and get their degree and whatnot. So established a committee with a couple faculty members who actually developed some parameters on tutoring and I've always said to recruits, we're going to give you everything we can do to help you get your degree, but we're not going to do one thing. We're not going to do it for you. And so, I think they knew that, we're not going to cheat. We're not going to do your papers and all that stuff. So, but I did that for, I guess, 11 years and enjoyed it. I mean, I saw kids that really came that weren't prepared, and came from poor high schools, and socioeconomic backgrounds were bad, and but it was so rewarding to see somebody engage and begin to become independent learners, rather than having to kind of baby them and whatnot. And
so you spent 11 years taking kids where they were, assessing the challenges, supporting them, but making them take the steps to be successful. That's awesome.
And I think most of those kids at that time, the academic credentials at that time were only 11 core courses, and then you had to get 700 or 800 on the SAT. So it wasn't real challenging with that. So fortunately, the NCAA, I think, had really stepped it up when, they told eighth graders, say, hey, look, we're going to 13 core courses. So you better don't take basket weaving and shop, and you better take some courses to prepare you for college. And now I think it's 16 core courses in high school.
Yeah, the Prop 68, when we were coming through, these guys couldn't, it really wasn't you almost hid the fact if you were a good student when you were younger, playing football.
Right.
But today, these kids, they're the academic standards. That's one thing I think the NCAA and folks like you have really done a good job of enhancing the expectations. And you have to be a smart person to come play football at the level that is being played because of the playbooks, the complexity, I think, that has grown the game.
And I think it's very unfortunate to put somebody in a situation that they can't compete.
Right.
And so, you always had to kind of evaluate transcripts and talk to high school counselors and coaches and everything. Everybody's a good kid that's a good player, but can they handle the work?
Right.
Because it's like drinking out of a fire hydrant when you get to college. I mean, it goes fast. I mean, expect you to read a lot and all that. So, but it was really rewarding to see kids that probably came there with the aspirations of playing in the NFL, which we supported. But to see them graduate and their parents see that, maybe they're first generation graduates, and so that was really a rewarding.
Oh yeah,
job.
Well, it sounds like you have really just made the best out of every opportunity that you have gotten. That didn't necessarily seek these opportunities;
Right.
They just came to you, and you did the best you could do.
I think the good Lord put those in my life. I'm looking back, there's no question that He did. But and then when Terry Don Phillips came in 2002, he came over to Vickery Hall the very first day he got there. And I saw him walking in. I think I had study hall that night, and he was walking in, and he came over to see me. I thought probably he was going to fire me or something. And he said, I want to move you over to the right, be right beside me. And I said, what? I mean, he said, first day. I said, I'm pretty, I'm fine here. And he said, well, no, everybody tells me that, you can help me. So I did that for about a year.
So the staff told him they needed to come. He needed to come get you.
Somebody told him.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome. So he came and got you.
And so I thought about it. I talked to my wife, and because I did enjoy my job there. I felt I was making a difference. And then I worked beside him for a year, and then George Bennett, who was a long-term IPTAY director, decided to retire. And one day he came over and he was looking for Terry Don, and he came into my office. He said, is Terry Don in there? I said, yeah, I think he's in there with somebody. And he said, well, I want to see him. He said, I want to recommend somebody for the IPTAY job. And I said, well, I have some resumes over there that I'm going through. And he said, no, I want to recommend you. And I said, I don't know anything about IPTAY and fundraising and all that. So make a long story short, George did recommend me, and Terry Don called me in and said, I want you to go over to IPTAY. And I said, well, Terry Don, I don't know about that. I said, and again, another opening that, and Terry Don convinced me. He said, look, you got coaching, you got academics, and he said, here's an opportunity to have fundraising on your resume. And so I went over there, and of course, a few years into my job, we implemented the seed equity plan, which was very challenging because we had not made many changes in the IPTAY levels or donations or whatever.
Yeah.
And so we did announce it a year ahead. We hear you. Next year, if you're sitting at this level, this is what's going to cost you IPTAY wise.
Yep.
And
I'm sure you were the most popular person.
and so I did that until 2013 and then 14. And then when Dan Radakovich came, I had already had my retirement years in and everything, and I had applied as a candidate for the athletic director's job. And I know how leadership works. I understand that. So Dan, I told him, I said, well, I'm going to step aside, and he said, no, I really want you to stay. He said, just, stay for a year and help me. And I did. And Dan was, he did a lot of things for Clemson, especially in the facilities.
Yeah.
I mean, he built soccer facilities, enhanced the suites, built the Reeves Center, football facility.
Yeah, he did a lot of great things.
He did a lot of good things.
I should say y'all did a lot of great things together.
And so I stayed that year, and then I retired in June, and then in August, the president at Anderson, Evans Whitaker, called me, and unexpectedly, I answered the phone. He said, this is Evans Whitaker. I thought it was like a defensive back or something with that name.
That's a good one.
And but anyway, he introduced himself, and he said, I'd like to talk to you and everything. So I had lunch with him, and he asked me if I'd be interested. And I thought, well, here's another opportunity. I kind of wasn't ready to just, lay down my hoe yet.
Yeah.
And so I went there, and we had some challenges. We didn't have a whole lot of locker rooms for teams and everything, but I worked with the president, and he worked with me, and we did some facility things. really has put them in the position they are today.
You know, I tell you, Billy D, I want to get into, because that story, that was one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, was how you ended up becoming the athletic director at Anderson University, and you established football there, if I'm not, or helped them set that up, right?
I helped them set that up. I mean, I gave them some, I gave President Whitaker a notebook that these are the expenses.
Okay.
He was a money guy, a budget guy. But I told him,
which is smart. He wanted to know how much is it going to take us to start a football program at Anderson University.
Right.
And he came to you with that, and you gave him this notebook.
Right. I told him, and I told him things like, don't play at TL, Hannah, or West Side. You lose your identity. I said, establish your stadium, put, turf the field, enhance the little stadium that they had.
Yep.
And, you got to have a scoreboard, you got to have helmets, you got to have shoulder pads. Those things cost money.
Yep.
And you're going to have to hire, 6 or 7 coaches and, people to help you, support staff, more trainers, a video staff. And so, I told them that, it would be an initial expense, but I think it would give your institution just as much exposure as your Christian institution does. I mean, because it is, its reputation precedes itself. It is really a Christian school. It's a great school, good kids. And I said, you'll get Anderson in the news.
Yeah. Football.
And, yep.
Sports.
And then I actually, that was about 40 years in athletics, and I just kind of got tired of it. Anderson was so small that the athletic director has to be there just about every event. I mean, I worked concession stands sometimes when somebody didn't show up when I was the AD. But I got a little bit tired of, a volleyball game one night and get home at 9 o'clock. Next night is soccer, and the next night is a basketball game. So, I got tired of that 35-minute drive. I didn't move.
So. Billy D, I appreciate you. The time here, this we're going to have to come back and finish this interview. But when we come back, thank you for staying in here on the Straight Lines to Success. When we come back, we're going to talk to Billy D on part 2, and we're going to talk about some of these things that he's been talking about, the background. He makes it seem so easy, and we're going to unpack some of this success. We're going to hear a little bit more about the Anderson University football program they've established over there. Of course, my daughter looks like she may be going to Anderson, so I've taken a personal interest in that school and really appreciate what you've done. It is an incredible institution, and there's a lot of great things that we're going to talk about on the other side. We're going to talk about the All-Star Bowl and how Billy D helped us with that, and unpack some of these life lessons. And so, again, we appreciate you being here on the Straight Line to Success, and tune in next week and catch the rest of this incredible interview.
Thank you.
Doing the best they can.
Thank you for listening to the Straight Line to Success. Copyright 2026 Wyatt Sports and Entertainment, LLC. All rights reserved. Visit www.tslts.com and join the TSLTS Insider for exclusive content and updates.
And we're doing the best we can. Everybody do your best. Come on, come on.
Do your best. Do your best. The best you can.